I had the best time working on today's episode. Well, first of all, I went out to visit Matt Walsh. He has a recording studio. It's called Oceanus. It's in Rockaway Beach. It's a few hundred feet away from the Atlantic Ocean. Matt is a really cool guy. He's into recording on analog tape. He has, he didn't call it a vintage console, but I thought it was kind of vintage. Great monitoring system, great sound. Everything he played for me sounded really good. And one of the things he has there that makes it kind of special is he has more than one echo chambers that he built into this house. So instead of using digital reverb and all that kind of stuff, he doesn't need to. He's got the best, let's say, analog reverb. It's just that as it occurs in a room. So it sounds really good, very complex. Echo chambers sound good because the reverb is complex, like it is in real life. Anyway, enough blabbering. This is me talking to Matt Walsh at Oceanus.
So I don't know if I'm an audiophile, but I guess if someone who thinks about audio as much as I do,
it's an ironic thing that people who try to make great sounding records are generally not audiophiles. That it's just not part of the way people.
But
think.
if someone,
if you were a civilian, in other words, if you weren't in the
but
business.
if someone said to me, hey, I'll give you like a bunch of money for doing no work, I would go out and get it. I would get a pair of awesome speakers for my house, and I would get my room treated. So I would do those things. Like, I really enjoy listening to records when they sound good. Like it's really a great pleasure.
I know you put all your here's
this
where it's at. This is your hi-fi system.
And this desk is
Oh yeah, we didn't talk about your we didn't talk about
this is a very not vintagey desk. It's a very clinical sounding desk.
Really?
Yeah.
You're surprising me again. What is it?
It's a Neotech.
Okay.
It's all transformerless. It's all very modern. I mean, it was
How old is it? It's not new.
It's 83, 84. But it's like a modern design.
Modern design, but it's 38 years old.
Right, because if it was manufactured today, it would cost $50,000 or $100,000, and it doesn't. But it's the same stuff people are doing today, like not colored. They're very low noise, really nice sounding, a lot of gain, but they don't have a sound to them.
Right. Well, that's all your outboard stuff is where that stuff comes
Yeah,
from.
I actually don't. I only have a couple of outboard preamps, 2.
Okay.
But
well, your other toys.
Yeah,
over
this is all just for like making bleeps and blorps and crap.
But all this other stuff over there, yeah, that's where the sound comes from. I mean, the color.
Really, to me, just we were talking about I really like to get the sound basically in the room. You've heard the recordings.
Yeah.
You know what they sound like. I basically like to get it in the room and using the room, and the other stuff is just. So
you see, that's a very audiophile approach. Is you're using the sound comes from the room,
right, and the instruments and the singers.
Well, of course, but I'm saying those same musicians in a dead studio, all the other stuff would be added to create the sound of the room, the non-room room. But here, you're letting the room add that beauty around the music itself.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah.
But this studio just strikes me as, it's very retro feeling, even though you are using a computer for Pro Tools mixing, but it's like you have your reverb chambers.
Yeah.
Actual, not digital reverb, but real reverb.
Yeah, well,
plate reverb.
I don't think of it as retro. I guess
it is. Yeah.
It is. The technique is retro, but the effect is, a natural sounding, the studio is about physical resonances. If it's about one thing, that's what it's about. It's about physical resonances. So, it's been designed so that we can have mics that have a 70-foot throw from your source to your microphone. You can have that here, even though the studio doesn't seem like it would be.
Wait, a 70-foot throw, what does that mean?
I mean that, if I have a mic out in the hall there, and you're playing the kick drum down here, it's a 70-foot run from when you hit the drum to when the microphone will pick it up.
Okay.
That just sounds cool.
Yeah.
And it's just a sound that, it's bouncing around a lot, so it's not as good as like a hall that actually just has a straight line of 70 feet. but there's no substitute for air, the movement of
Yeah,
air.
and
There's
the
no
complexity of all those reflections piling up on top of each other.
So if there was a way, I mentioned to you this, mentioned this to you earlier, if there was a way for me to buy that and fit it into a box, I would buy that thing. Like I'm apolitical about it,
Okay.
and I do love the Eventide and stuff like that too, but it doesn't like. There's something to be said for the ear hearing physical resonances, and so I do love those old Phil Spector records, and I love the old Chess records.
Where they had reverb chambers.
Where they had chambers.
An actual room with a microphone at one
Yeah.
end and a speaker at the
Yeah.
other, and that's a reverb chamber.
Yep. Just
Super
like
basic.
above us right now.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where, but it is very basic, but it gives a sense of realism that can't be imparted otherwise.
Right. And you have, down the hall here is a bathroom with a microphone.
First of all, do you know that the very first echo chambers were bathrooms? So
Well,
I'll
it
tell you
makes sense.
two stories.
Tiled rooms, yeah.
Bill Putnam, the Universal Audio guy, his first reverb was a bathroom, and an interesting story. This is the epitome of '70s excess, which is that in Lindsey Buckingham's house, he had a bathroom that he really liked the sound of. And he was like, "Oh yeah, so I'm just going to record this record at home, and I'm just going to use the bathroom as a reverb." And the label was like, "No way." So they're like, "No, you have to do it in the studio." And this is for Tusk.
Mhm.
So
Wow.
he went to the studio, hired a construction crew. They took measurements of his bathroom at home, and they reconstructed the bathroom that he liked the sound of in his house. They reconstructed it down to like the exact kind of toilet that he had and everything in the studio. And that crazy reverb that you're hearing on Tusk, that's what that is. And that's an awesome sounding. I don't know if you know that record.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's awesome.
Yeah.
Like, well, the Lindsey Buckingham songs are awesome. Anyways.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah.
That's pretty. But just, yeah, the stuff you played for me, it's funny because you're not making audiophile recordings. But to me, they have an audiophile feel because of the way you're miking them, the way you're using reverb on them.
But what do you mean by an audiophile recording? Isn't
I mean,
an
it
audiophile recording
to
just
me,
a good recording?
No. Like when people say that Steely Dan is an audiophile recording, it wasn't made to be an audiophile recording. Well, many audiophiles can like Steely Dan,
Right.
but it's not an audiophile recording in Steve's definition. Steve's definition of an audiophile recording is that it's a sound of people playing together in a room, and you're capturing an event. Now, it doesn't literally have to be that, but it can sound enough like that that it feels like that. That's, to me, what an audiophile... So, in other words, older record, the Elvis Presley's Sessions at Sun, which was people playing together in a room, are, in that sense, audiophile recordings. There's a directness and a purity to it. And that's what I mean by an audiophile.
Right,
So there are now audiophile labels like Chesky Records and Reference Recordings, and my friend Todd with MA Recording. He makes records of people playing together, not only just in a room, but in interesting acoustic spaces, usually churches or concert halls.
But I mean, isn't that the natural? I mean, I think that's interesting to call that. That's like the natural state of affairs, right? Like, isn't that what people do? They get together with their buddies. They play some music. I mean, in a room.
Yeah.
You know,
what
like
a crazy idea.
So maybe if you record it, maybe that's what you should do. You should have it in its natural state of people playing together. I mean, that's what everybody's always. I mean,
if they could.
Yeah, if they could.
Well, because people make records nowadays, or for a very long time, that are assembling bits and pieces of sound, of tracking here, tracking there, adding this, adding that. They're not people playing together in a room.
That's cool too. I mean, you know, it's just something else. I mostly record performative music. Like, the people that want to record here mainly want to do records like that. I like that stuff a lot, and I've done a lot of it. I've also done like house records here, which I haven't played for you, but
you know me already.
No, I mean, it's just honestly, it's not my favorite thing either. In this instance, I just think there's a certain, you know, if you remember back when, like, I remember seeing particular shows when I was a kid. One in particular, the best thing I ever saw was I saw this band Shudder to Think at Maxwell's in Hoboken on November 17th, 1996. And you know, just the feeling of that band in that tiny little room, at the old back room at Maxwell's. They were on a major label at the time, and they were playing in a room that there could not have been more than 150 people there. And just that feeling of reality, if you can somehow imbue your recording with a sense of reality, it's more exciting, because it almost feels like when you're at a show that like anything can happen. Like, oh my gosh, this was an actual event in the space-time continuum. You know, it actually happened at a particular moment. I find something exciting about that. I don't know. It's I just always liked it. Even on like the even the old Led Zeppelin records are like that. Kind of. Like there's a lot
the
of
older records were more like the further back you go, they were actually people always playing together. And then they could change it and make them different, but they all started that way.
But also like architectural recording, like the Beatles recordings to me aren't very architectural. Like there's not a lot of room tone.
Right, I agree.
They're recording in a huge room,
right.
But you know, the mics sound really tight, or pretty tight, anyway. But those Zeppelin recordings, like, but like you said, so many of it, like all the chess recordings, you totally hear the room, and it sounds great. Like my wife is always getting mad that I'm buying microphones or I'm reading about microphones. Like I read about microphones constantly.
It's your tools.
Yeah, but in order to like, you know, properly capture something. So when I listen at home, I have like a pretty, by your standards, a pretty humble setup.
We have a Riga turntable, I know that.
Yeah, and
well, what's the rest of your system?
It's just a pair of Klipsch, the sixes they're called, and then I forget.
You know that I'm a big Klipsch guy, so you see we are again on the same wavelength.
Well,
okay.
Look, I thought from what I could tell, they were only like they were $600 or $700 for the pair, and they were pretty good. Like I know what a good sounding speaker sounds like, and they're pretty good.
Well, you have B&W 805s behind you.
Those were like $3,500 or $4,000, and they definitely sound better than the Klipsch. But the Klipsch is cool. Like, what I like to like listen in a little. I don't like to get too used to any one setup. It's bad for me to do that. I think like I need to be listening like to more of the commonality between them. When I was a teenager, maybe like 15 or so, 14, 15, I heard Steve Albini's recording of the last Nirvana record, which was just the realism was just it was shocking. It was like
that's in utero.
Yes, okay. It was jarring. It was almost like I had this disconcerting quality. It was so real that it was disconcerting, and the combination of this strange music and this otherworldly semi-dub mindset, but presented with absolute clarity. I just really was so into that concept. Like,
it was a life-changing moment.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. It really was, actually. I wouldn't have thought of it that way, but it definitely was.
I mean, your life might have been very different.
No,
had you not had those kinds of experiences.
It literally was that.
Or you were primed for that, because when you heard it, it affected you.
Yeah.
A lot of people heard that record and didn't become recording engineers. So, how do you feel about dynamic range compression? This is a very hot button topic with certain audiophiles.
How do I feel about compression? Well,
because we haven't, we talked a lot before this, but we actually didn't talk about that. So I don't really know what you're about to say.
Well, I mean, I like stuff to sound consistent. The best compression ever is somebody who plays their instrument consistently, like in the right way, so that you don't have to compress it much at all. I try not to do it too much, but the problem is like, at the final stages, we talked about the loudness thing, whatever, people have to have these loud records, and the way you get loud records is by compressing stuff. Typically, if I'm doing an analog session, I won't compress almost nothing.
Not even vocals?
I'll compress vocal, as a matter of course.
Okay.
So some singers, if I know they're not going to blast or something, if I know that they can really control it, that's very rare that a singer can have that level of control. I only know a few. But I will sometimes set up a limiter on like a kick drum or a snare drum with the intention that I'm not going to ever hit it.
Right.
The reason I'll do it is because it's just sometimes really annoying if like one kick jumps out way too loud.
Yeah.
So I'll just say, okay, he's in this range, he's playing in this range, this is the cool range. If he gets out of the cool range, let's just drag it back so we don't have to do some fader riding later. Sometimes I'll compress overheads a little bit to pull the snare out so that you're hearing more of the cymbal. But more typically what I'll do is in my room, I'll keep the mics tight on the cymbals, like pretty tight, so that they really just are cymbal mics, and so I have a pretty tight sound. If I don't bring up my room mics, which I have, as you know, I have the mics plastered all over the walls and stuff, and the chamber and whatever. My drum kit sound will tend to be pretty typical. So I try to get around compression. I mean, obviously everyone's over compressing everything. I mean, obviously, like you just turn on anything, everything's compressed. It's just boring. It's just a boring sound. I'm not political about it. Like I don't have like a feeling like, oh, this is a bad thing to do. The drums on I know you love the Beatles and I love the Beatles. The drums on She Said, right? They're totally trashed. Like the compression is totally pumping and it's weird and the timing's weird. I don't know exactly how it's done. I think it's the Fairchild thing, but I like that. It doesn't sound natural. It's not something an audiophile would like, but it's cool.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Cool is good.
Cool's good.
I'm all for
Yeah.
cool.
But I just think that most of those tricks have been like they've been done and they're not that strange, and it just to me sounds more like it just makes it sound unnatural. And we've been talking earlier about like, the excitement that an actual event gives. Compression can take that away.
Yeah.
Compression can take away that sense of you're there. The ear starts to hear like, whoa, this is phony.
Right.
This is phony now.
Right.
But yeah, I mean,
I guess it either has to be so subtly used that you're not aware of it,
yes,
or used as an effect,
right,
to create something like, yeah, that's cool,
right.
Kind of thing. Right.
It's
just gave the example.
Yeah,
of
it's hard. I don't.
It's that place in the middle where it's just like slamming it all the time, where it's just like enough already.
You sort of learn. You learn how to do things with your tool set, and my instinctive tool set is to get things to sound cool in a room. Like that's what I always like to hear. That's what my ear. Every time I record a band, I'm like, okay, what room mics am I going to use? Where am I going to have the room mics? Where's going to be the big picture of the photograph?
Right.
When we built this place, I tried to get something like that. I was like, how can I have this sound like a studio that's not a really small studio? And this is the way to do that. So it sounds it's a little strange, but people forget. There was the era of the great big studios. But there was also the era of the great little studios. Sun. Even Chess wasn't a very big room. Or Motown. If you look at the Motown room, it's larger than my room, but not by much. Yeah. And these guys were like really similar to the way they were working in a way that is similar to the way I work, in the sense that they were turning their space into a tool, and bending that tool to what they wanted to do. I think what they wanted to do was a little different than what I wanted to do, but it can be done. It's just something that people aren't, I don't think, that into these days, working with acoustics as a tool.
Right.
Like acoustics is just this tool that you shape with.
Like you were saying, you're recording in your bedroom or something.
Yeah.
Which is really lame. We haven't talked about this, but I don't know how you're going to answer this. So how do you feel about recording live vocals with the band playing?
Oh, wow. Yeah. I mean, it's great. It just never works.
No.
It just never works. I just did this record that you know about, Wild Yak's Live at Rippers, and we did a bunch of live vocals, and the singer in the band, he insisted on keeping all the live keeping the live vocals, and I was like, man, let's just ditch them. Let's just redo all the vocals. And look, live records, this happens. But there's something that about doing and we ended up keeping most of it because
he kept the live vocals.
Yeah, well, because the thing is, there's something about the energy, man. I don't want to be like a hippie, but there's something about the energy of the live vocal. It's just technically difficult to pull off.
Okay.
Especially if the person's also playing an instrument, and the music is like loud or it's fast, and it's just like it doesn't usually serve the record to have the vocals done live. I would like to do it more, and I do it sometimes. Like,
well, you record them. If you don't like them, you can trash them.
Yeah, you trash them. In some instances, you can do that. Like, it depends what instrument the person's playing. With the Maggie Carson record that we were just listening to, sometimes we had to do the live vocal with the. We had to, because she's playing banjo and she's playing in time with herself, and there's a bunch of solo passages where there's no meter, there's no click. You know what I mean? Like, it's just her going faster and slowing down the way she wants to. We would have never been. We actually tried to overdub the vocal, and it didn't work. So we had to do that in those cases. It wouldn't have made sense otherwise. And sometimes with I do some like new music-y kind of stuff and like sort of classical stuff, and those people want to do their live. They want to do the vocal live.
Whatever works for the music.
Yeah, whatever works for the music.
So, I have this as a total non-musician, but hanging around sometimes in studios. I'm always kind of curious what artists tell you they want from their sound, other than I want to sound better than I really am. Bigger, louder, a better player.
I don't know. I mean, what
do they say to you?
They don't really say.
Really? They just say, "Oh, Matt, just whatever you do."
I think people
do that thing.
they're here because they're usually here because they like something else I did.
Okay.
So I think they like, or they themselves worked on another record here. So I think people kind of know what I do, and they like it or they don't. You know, and I guess the people that come here probably like it. I haven't had. I can only think of one situation in which I told a person I wouldn't work on their record because I didn't know how to do what she wanted to do. She wanted to do something like very, very like modern pop, which I like some modern pop, but I don't know how to like get that kind of like instant Spotify sounds like everything kind of sound. I just said to her, like, you'd be better off with someone who already knows how to get this sound. So I guess it's like, I guess people just like it or don't. We're also not futzing with a lot of equipment. So there aren't too many options. I don't know. That's a really great question though. I'll have to put you in touch with someone. Someone who's made a record here.
I asked this question because when I asked my friend Alex, who I just did an interview with recently, but an older interview, and I said to him, what do musicians want? And his answer was very different because he said they want to sound better than they actually are. They want to sound like the singer wants to sound bigger and louder and more powerful, and the drummer, they want different things. They want to be not what they actually are, which I thought was not.
That makes sense. I can understand.
It makes sense. Yeah. Because it was that thing of is the idea to capture the performance or make it better than the performance actually was.
So I can think of an instance. This was an interesting thing. There was a band called Prison that made a record here, and that record actually hasn't come out, but it's really cool. And they did it all live. They did the whole thing live in 2 days. It was all improvisational, completely improvisational, and they would have different singers, and their friends would just like roll up and like start playing trombone in the midst of some psychic feedback track or whatever. It was really a wild situation. The one thing I recorded it the way I guess what you would call the audiophile way.
Right.
Like, I recorded it as, here is a snapshot of this moment in time as I hear it.
Okay.
They wanted to make slightly more of a rock record.
Okay.
So they were like, we want to hear more low end on the kick drum, we want to hear the drums louder, and I was like, well, the drummer actually just, he didn't really play that. He was actually kind of a chill drummer. But the band wanted to hear it more as a rock record. I do, and we remixed it, and I do think it was probably overall a cooler presentation the way they wanted it.
Okay.
I think they were right. It was still probably in your realm of, it just had more like more thud, or we had to do a little bit of trickery around the drums, but
it's the art of it, you know.
We're just putting out really our first release, which is Wild Yaks Live at Rippers, which, if any audiophiles are interested in a record recorded at a hamburger stand, that actually sounds really good. It was recorded on the beach, and
can we hear the waves?
No,
You could throw some in.
No, it's a very energetic record, shall we say? So you just pretty much you hear the band and people screaming.
Oh, that's good. That works for me.
It's great. Shameless plug.
All right.
But
it's the best kind. Anyway, thanks, Matt. Thanks
Thank you,
everybody
Steve.
for watching. This is the Audiophiliac Daily Show. Bye bye, guys.